You are live, Commissioner.
Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for this Thursday, March 10th, 2022. It's 9:31 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Vice Chair of the Board. Our Chair, Commissioner Carolina Mejia, is participating virtually and will be here shortly. Commissioner Gary Edwards, present. County Manager Mira Chavez, and our Public Information Director, Megan Porter. Jenica Machado, I see on the screen, our Economic Development Director, and we have some guests from the South Sound Military and Communities Partnership. The agenda this morning is a 30-minute informational update from the South Sound Military and Community Partnership. And so we have a public attendance available through our Thurston County YouTube channel or a conference call by calling 360-252-9020. The PIN is 1234. And with that, I think I'll pass to the County Manager.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Maria. Welcome to Thurston County on the virtual environment. Hopefully, before the meeting, Bill and I would just commiserate, and that would be great. At some point, we can actually meet in person. I look forward to that day. So today, Commissioners, you will hear a presentation from Bill and Maria, as well as Jenica, related to the South Sound Community Partnerships. And along the way, you will hear the I-5 improvements as the topic. And as far as I understand, the reconciliation between the House and the Senate still includes $75 million for this project, which is a great step forward. As you know, Thurston County had in a legislative agenda this project as number one priority. So with that in mind, Bill, introductions, Maria?
Certainly, gentlemen and lady, it's my pleasure to be back with you, even though it's virtually. It seems like it's been a couple years. Jenica, we see on a monthly basis, and she's a great asset for the steering committee, I'll tell you that. And before we get started with the slide presentation, I did send ahead PDF files for your read ahead. Will I be controlling my own slides, or is somebody there controlling?
Yeah, you do have an option to share your screen, Bill. So
okay, very good. So I myself am assisted by Maria Tobin. She's on the screen. Maria, why don't you introduce yourself quickly and we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank you for having us today. My name is Maria Tobin. I am the program coordinator for SSMCP. As a prior service veteran, I am here and I'm ready to help my community and the South Sound. Thank you for having me.
And I'm Bill Adamson. Once again, I've been with the organization a little over 6 years, and I'll be starting to share my slides here now as we get started. I am a 30-year Army retiree and continue to stay active with JBLM. So I know you're all familiar with our organization to some degree. Quickly, mission statement more or less is center of the slide. I just want to talk about what's not on this slide for a second. We're in our membership annual dues renewal drive right now, which is part of the reason we're doing this meeting, but we also wanted to update you on some critical that are near and dear to Thurston County. I'm a Thurston County resident. I'm one of those few that live in Thurston County, have an Olympia mailing address, and pay my water bill to Lacey, so I don't really know where I live.
Yeah.
So I know you're familiar with the steering committee, of which you've been a member for years. Down at the working group chair level, though, we have a couple of ads that we don't have the logos on this slide. And probably first and foremost is the City of Olympia. They've been with us as a general member for several years, but they're upscaling to a working group co-chair role. There's several areas that they're interested in being involved with, but we're hoping that they choose the social services working group, typically headed right now by United Way. And we could use another partner there. And then secondly, another logo that's not on this slide yet is an organization called Operation Red Dot. It's really a real estate firm that has some innovative ideas on how to find off-base housing for service members and how to fund that off-base housing. And so they've just earlier this week joined us at the $2,500 a year level. So with that, I'll get started here. So first, what is the value of your membership? We have served as a regional resource convener ever since SSMCP was created in 2011. But we also do a lot of legislative advocacy work on behalf of our local governments and the JBLM military community. You can see some of our benefits below. In a 2019 membership survey, we found out that 54% of our stakeholders felt the most valuable thing we do for them is developing a shared legislative agenda. And it's been working very well for us for the last 5 years. We also have formalized standard collaboration methods, have military leaders meet with community leaders at least on a monthly basis. And we have a library of grant studies and reports that are available to our members. A lot of good work we've done over the years on transportation, conservation work, housing, a number of things with land use, encroachment into the military space. So we will continue to work those, but part of the thing I wanted to show you is a update, proposed work plan for 23-24. Our current work plan is the 21-22 work plan. So there's no changes this year, but what we will be doing here later in the year at the steering committee retreat in September, and then the November 2022 elected officials of council is getting a new work plan approved. What you see here are the top two are brand new areas, resiliency planning as it relates to climate change and occupational licensure, which I'll get into in a little bit more here in a second when I get into our legislative program section. We'll talk in detail about I-5 improvements. Our number one priority item coming out of our growth coordination plan update has to do with access to attainable off-base housing. So you'll see more work on that. We'll continue our work on clear zone encroachment. This is primarily the McCord North Clear Zone. That primarily affects JBLM, Lakewood, and Pierce County. I'll talk a bit here in a minute about the economic benefits of JBLM in the region, but we need to do a better job of communicating this, and we could use your assistance on your perception of how this comes across, because it's a lot of facts and figures that might fly over the top of folks' head. Some work on childcare and working with providers of services to military families, and then our state legislative actions. So back in 2020, we did a JBLM regional economic impact analysis. This is the second one. The original one we did in 2018 is superseded by this one. The one in 2018 was just about the JBLM workforce. This one is more all-encompassing. You can read the problem statement. It's the entire economic impact of JBLM. And we did this in collaboration with the University of Washington, Tacoma Center for Business Analytics. They basically gave me 4 grad students, an economics professor, and the chair of the Center for Business Analytics to crunch the numbers and do the analytics on raw data that I obtained from JBLM and some other sources. And so what we found is statewide, almost a $14 billion impact on the state. Of that, over $12 billion is just in Pierce and Thurston County. Over 92,000 full-time equivalent jobs in the state, over 83,000 of those in just Pierce and Thurston County. Of those jobs, there's 34,000 statewide that are what we call economic spin-off jobs. These are civilian jobs off base that would otherwise not be here if it weren't for the presence of JBLM. So restaurants, car dealerships, mechanics, dry cleaners. You think of the stuff that's needed to run a small city. JBLM is a city of about 120,000 people. 25,500 of those spin-off jobs are here in the South Sound. The little chart to your right, I have a blow up of that next, but the message from here on this slide is military installations are key economic drivers in major employment centers. And the bomb blast in yellow there, I wanted to do an update, so I did a quick data search. And you can see that for 2021, which is during the heart of the pandemic, JBLM's defense contracts, defense-wide, went up to over 2.2 billion. So this chart shows the methodology for how we arrived at those results. So raw data came in first. We ran something called an in-plan simulation on it, and then the outputs were Washington State, statewide, Pearson, Thurston County combined, and then each individual county had results as well. And so what you see below there are regional economic impact point estimates. And I just highlight a couple of these. The bottom gray one, local contracts, almost $1 billion. And by local contracts, these are contracts that originate at the JBLM contracting office, as opposed to all DoD contracts that are affecting this region. That's the difference between the 2.2 billion on the original slide and this almost 1 billion are just JBLM contracting office contracts. We've got a large retiree population here. They get about $1.27 billion a year. And down on the bottom green box, this is basic allowance for housing for active duty service members who live off base, over $600 million. At the same time, we were doing a business leader survey. This was done primarily very end of 2019, early 2020. Thurston County and Pierce County, you can see the percentage of respondents. Thurston actually had a little bit more with 53% of the respondents. And then you can see a number of these business owners or managers had a prior affiliation with JBLM or the military. And then on this chart to the right, you see a bomb blast. It says 12.1 billion. What the question was for these people is, what is the economic impact of JBLM to this area? 85% of the respondents thought it was something less than 10 billion. Well, in this region alone, it's 12.1 billion, and across the state, it's 14 billion. So the UWT folks said that was statistically significant. I can't tell you what that means, but it's statistically significant. Their perceptions were so different than what the actual numbers were. So another way of looking at this, because when we talk a lot of billions and millions of dollars, it might kind of go over people's head. We thought, let's take a look at the economic output of JBLM compared to other industries. And so this is a comparative analysis of several industries in Thurston and Pierce County combined. And you see that JBLM's economic output is higher than the entire construction industry, finance and insurance, wholesale trade, and retail trade. And just to be fair, at the very top is the real estate business, almost $14 billion. Obviously, in this environment, that's going to continue. But JBLM fares really well as far as its economic impact on this region. And over on the lower blue box, economic multiplier is explained there, but the outcome is for every dollar we spend, JBLM generates $1.52 of value to the South Sound. And this is courtesy the Thurston EDC. I asked Gene Angel, who's their senior researcher, to help me out with this, and this is what I got back. We've been successful in obtaining funding at both the state and federal level, $835 million total. A lot of that has to do with transportation projects. You see in the blue there, plus 75 million. As we walked into this briefing at 9:09 this morning, our 75 million was still surviving. And we voted on today, which is the last day of the legislative session. And that's specific to the JBLM, or to the I-5 corridor project within Nisqually Delta. What's important about the federal side is these are federal dollars flowing into Washington and the South Sound because of JBLM's presence in SSMCP's collaboration with the local jurisdiction. So that's over $250 million. We have a state legislative program. We have this kind of bucketed in two ways, developing legislative priorities, which are determined by our steering committee and elected officials council, and then taking policy positions that on issues that affect military service members and their families. So we're going to talk in detail about the one at the top on the I-5 Nisqually Delta project. Just a quick update on the other two that are grayed out. PCCA program, that stands for Defense Community Compatibility Account. It's an account the state established several years ago. It currently remains unfunded. It got through all the process with unanimous support, and then it just didn't make the deadline to make the final votes. It wasn't voted out, it just got killed because of time. So we'll be revisiting the DCCA program again next year during the full session. Commerce Department will be announcing another drive for DCCA applications from local communities that will be considered for funding in the next full session. On occupational licensing improvements, actually Maria did a number of testimonies on that. 2 of the 4 compacts that we were supporting have made it through, that being the occupational therapy compact and the psychology compact. So Washington State joins a number of other states supporting that. Basically what that means is when you move from one area of the country into Washington State, the amount of time you have to wait to reapply for a state license is not eliminated, but shortened, something under 30 days. And then it's a financial readiness issue for military spouses when they have to relocate and they lose a high-level job, like a nurse or a therapist of some sort. The one bill that didn't make it through had to do with the spouse, military spouse, sort of reciprocity agreement. We'll be revisiting that one next year as well. That was a broader attempt, included all kinds of professions from daycare providers, childcare, school teachers, not just healthcare professionals. And we need to do a little bit more work on that. So let's turn our attention here in the next 12 minutes or so to the I-5 corridor. I know you guys are familiar with this. This is the graphic we use to show the 17-mile corridor from exit 116 to 99. 116, where the train derailment happened, taught us a bunch of lessons. We have 2 groups that have been working this since about 2017. An advocacy group that includes members of the Thurston County Shared Legislative Priorities. Many of these, you can look at the arrowheads that are bullet points. They're all SSMCP members. And we have a transportation working group as well. One of our leads for that is the Thurston Regional Planning Commission, as well as WashDOT and Pierce Transit. And then on the implementation side, more technical in nature, where the transportation planners are and engineers, the guys that work the numbers. Importantly, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but in January, PCRC picked up our project on their legislative agenda. So that's great support out of Pierce County. And it turns out Pierce County has a lot of bit of work to do on the 2-mile stretch that's in Pierce County. So for a little context on this, the legislature charged WashDOT with a corridor study. And in that study, they needed to come up with a strategic plan for the Nisqually River bridges. They funded it at $2.25 million. And what we found is, this project is much more than just a transportation project. And in green bullets there, you can see all the different functions that we're touching on. SSMCP is mostly involved in this because there's a third of our JBLM workforce that lives south of the river. When they can't get to work, they can't get to their place of duty, it affects military readiness, their ability to complete their mission. It could be a national security issue, much like when the train derailed, a third of the workforce couldn't get to work for a couple of days. And the flooding we're talking about coming up here that will overtop I-5 will be much more than a few days. So where we're at with the project as funding is concerned, an original shot in the arm was $500K back in 2017. Then again, the state legislature provided $2.25 million for the planning environmental linkage report, which was completed late last year. We also got additional funding from the Nisqually tribe and WashDOT for the U.S. Geologic Survey to take on a hydrologic study. That was $300K. And then last session, we got $5 million for the NEPA study. NEPA is expected to be completed by 2025. That will give us the preferred alternative to what we currently have. In blue, you see the $75 million. We had asked for 125. The House and Senate Democrats proposed a package called Move Washington. we have 75 million in that package for our project. And that includes 19 million for the 3 roundabouts out off of SR 507 in the vicinity of Yelm and McKenna. 2 of those are in Pierce County. And then a construction estimate, which we're being told is high, but we'd rather show people high than be low and have to ask for a lot more. So that's kind of where we're at with funding. The corridor report on the left graphic here came out in June 2020. Important thing there was they considered their results provisional until the Nisqually Indian Tribe USGS study was completed. That study, the boundaries of it, you can see the graphic on the right. So TRPC was on contract to WashDOT to do the modeling. This shows a shot north of exit 116 on I-5. This is modeling for the 2040 scenario with no build. It's the no build option. And although you can't tell it on this slide, that red line is really a series of red dots that back up from 116 all the way to 125, a 9-mile backup. We do nothing about it because there's constraint at Mounts Road as we go from 5 lanes to 3 lanes. And that persists across the bridge. The other problem area you're more familiar with maybe is down by the 101 interchange. That no build option basically results in gridlock all the way from Olympia up to the Nisqually Delta area. So it's almost continuous. And this is under traffic conditions of a Monday through Friday commute time around 6 o'clock. No accident, no breakdown. This is just the way it's going to be by 2040. So the Pell purpose and need is on this slide. Its purpose is to evaluate the strategies that came out of the corridor study. Series of photos on the right. I think you've seen these in before. I started using these back in 2017, but basically the Oxbow continues to evolve. It's getting closer and closer to I-5. The study says in about 17 years, that Oxbow will intersect with I-5 and under a significant flooding event will be overtopped. So been using the term Achilles heel of the I-5 corridor for a while. You might be familiar with some articles that came out in the Olympian and the Tacoma News Tribune about a month ago, a 3-part series with a video all about this project. It was very well done. And we started using this term, and it is the Achilles heel of I-5. So USGS has this graphic to explain the conditions in the future. This is the outcome of climate change and sea level rise. You can see the drivers, more rain, less snow, a longer flood season, higher groundwater tables, and it just creates this condition where there's going to be more flooding. It all comes together right in the Nisqually Delta. So they did a modeling run, USGS did, of conditions similar to the 96 Chehalis flood with 1 meter sea level rise. And what we're finding here now is that at 4 points over I-5, flooding overtops I-5. This is projected to happen as early as 17 years from now. Given the time it takes for transportation projects to get improved, that's why we started back in 2017. So this photograph was taken just a few months ago when we were doing the interview for the newspaper on this article. It still shows the Oxbow continues to evolve. The hydrology study confirms this I-5 causeway and its existing bridges are at risk for flooding. I'll let you read the rest of that. But it also impacts salmon habitat, which is key to our partners at the Nisqually tribe. And we've been working together with them to try to rectify both problems, the traffic problem and the environmental ecological problem. The other key finding out of this report is captured here. The model showed that flooding during the 10 or 25-year event, like in 2020 or 1996, with the projected sea level rise, and the current constriction imposed by I-5 is all landfill across the Delta. Will challenge flood management, human safety, and whatnot. And the arterial road down there by Brown's Farm It's going to be annually overtopped where Martin Way comes down into the highway at exit 114. But here's the final summary on this slide. I know you guys are all familiar with this, but it's important that everybody speaks with the same message. I gave this briefing previously to the Pierce County Council. They're fully on board, and they're the ones that pushed for PCRC to adopt our legislative agenda. So that's what our project will try to do. We have some current challenges and we don't have transportation working groups on a steady schedule, but when we do have them, they're typically important because we're talking big dollars for a project that's pretty time sensitive if you look at the findings of the USGS report. And so consistent representation is important. I try to put out, when these working group meetings are going to happen 3 or 4 weeks in advance. And so this virtual environment has helped somewhat, getting people to attend, but when we do this, it's important. We also need to start our effort to look for federal funding, especially when we start to the construction phase. Speaking with one voice is important, and I think a lot of our members appreciate that. That's why our regional legislative agenda has been so successful. When you have a dozen cities, a couple counties, and an Indian tribe all saying the same thing, it carries some weight at the state legislature. We have some upcoming events. That's my last slide. Our growth coordination plan update will be published later this month. That'll be a key document that guides SSMCP for the next 10 years. We have our next elected officials council, which Commissioner Edwards will be speaking at, followed by a golf tournament, which is a community connector golf tournament hosted by the JBLM commander. That's to try to link up the units that are aligned with specific cities around our region. So for an example, I know the city of Lacey has 2-2 Stryker Brigade as its partner. We'll be doing another JBLM workforce survey. We intend to release that in May and then be able to back brief our November elected officials council on the results of that JBLM workforce survey. I think with that, I'll stop sharing my screen, and I've saved a minute or two if we have any questions.
Madam Chair, I'll let you direct traffic at this point.
Okay, thank you, sir. Questions, anybody? Commissioner Edwards?
Bill, how are we coming with our congressional delegation on this stuff?
On the spouse licensure stuff, they're very supportive and looking for more ways to help on that. On the highway stuff, Don Anderson, who is our SSMCP elected officials co-chair, is meeting with, or has met yesterday with Congresswoman Strickland back in DC. They're supportive. What we're trying to work on is the timing of all this stuff. So let's say we get our $75 million from the state. Probably $6 million is going to go towards right-of-way acquisitions, 19 million towards the Yelm roundabouts, and that leaves us $50 million to do the pre-design and alternative work. We can't really, we'll get the alternative by the end of the NEPA study, which is 2025. Then we got to develop the actual solution, probably from 25 to 27, and we may need additional federal dollars for that, because if you recall, our original ask was 125 million. We're only getting 75 million. So we may have to go to the feds to plus up some of the money we got from the state so we can finalize the planning for that alternative to I-5. And then construction in the best case scenario, best case, maybe 2027, 2028. And
Okay.
we need the feds on a multi-billion-dollar project to contribute a lot of dollars, especially since it's a federal interstate. You would think they would play pretty heavily in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menser, questions?
No, I'm familiar with these concepts, and I appreciate the presentation and review and putting all this together, and you guys do great work. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here this morning and for this presentation and this update. With that, if there are no more comments or questions,
I just want to echo, thank you.
go ahead, County Manager.
Bill and Maria. It is, again, the Thurston County is supportive of Southside Community Partnerships Program, support of the I-5 corridor. If there's anything that we can do in addition to that support, please let us know.
Thanks, Ramiro. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we are adjourned.
Okay.